Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It's your Wednesday night uncensored, unfiltered, and unafraid sports show. You still up? This episode of Buffalo After Dark starts now. Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is actually Thursday night, February 16th. Had a little scheduling conflict last night, but we're back here tonight. So, of course, Bob, it's been another week, and we have a lot of different things that have happened, both not only in the NHL, but we're going to get to that in a little bit, but we also had the last game of the season, Super Bowl 57.
Yep, I was going to say to you is congratulations, fuckhead. You pushed the schedule back one day, but that's okay.
Sorry. Intern season. So
shit happens.
Yeah. But on the bright side, I'm doing my job. A couple others weren't, so it's all good.
I mean, what else can you really say about it?
Yeah, exactly. But we have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. Of course, if you guys want to jump on 929-205-6099, or you can join us in the Facebook chat. We have that up and running on our page. And let's just jump right into it. So, of course, Super Bowl 57. The Chiefs decided to actually show up in the second half. Jalen Hurts played way better than Mahomes. And in my opinion, he was more of an MVP candidate than Mahomes was. But yet, the Chiefs found a way to get it done. And Big Red hoists another trophy.
Oh, God. I can't imagine what everyone is thinking. Because, like, Britt was upset about the Super Bowl. But she's like, you know what? At the end of the day, the Chiefs earned this win. But at the end of the day, she just does not like them as much as, like, Cincinnati or, like, New England or anything like that. She just did not want the Chiefs to simply win. And I don't blame her for that. Because now that pretty much summifies as Patrick Mahomes being the new face of the NFL. Like, the Chiefs are now the new Patriots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, look what they did. I mean, they absolutely got dominated by the Philadelphia in the first half. Philadelphia's defense was just eating them alive. Of course, defensive touchdowns. Jalen Hurts was playing like no tomorrow. He was just straight up a baller and over 300 yards. And yet, the Chiefs still figured it out.
Well, I will say this about the Super Bowl is I think the Eagles had a much better first half, but why does anybody care about the first half when you have to perform better in the second? It's almost like as if Philly forgot how to play football.
Right. Yeah. And there's two halves of football. You got to play all 60 minutes. And the fact is, Philadelphia's offense did nothing in the second half. Their defense was suspect in the second half. But how about that one call, that hold, that a lot of people were talking about that basically ended up causing Philadelphia to be completely done at the end of the game?
You know, it's funny you said that because James Bradbury even straight up said that was my fault. Honestly, I think that's a call that should have never been made. But at the same time, James Bradbury did openly say, and I quote, that he thought the refs were going to let it slide. You don't assume shit. You don't want to commit that kind of penalty. And that's what and James Bradbury ultimately killed every chance Philadelphia had to win the Super Bowl.
Right. Now, to his credit, he owned it. The problem is you cost your team 10 yards and basically a down. So you'll totally lose, any remaining chance you possibly have to get those points to go on top of Kansas City.
Philly, man. Jalen Hurts, like I said, he played a great first half.
Yeah.
But he kind of just fell off the map in the second. But to his credit, all around, he played a great game.
He really did. He showed up, and if anyone doesn't doubt him, I mean, now you know what he's made of. And I kind of look at it this way. He's Mike Vick in the run game, but he actually has an arm.
I don't know about the whole arm thing, because if you look at the last throw he made in the Super Bowl, the very last throw, he made it look like Tua.
Not as bad as Tua. Tua just sucks. We all know that.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but Jalen Hurts is obviously a better quarterback than Tua. But I'm saying from that length, because Jalen Hurts proved earlier in the game that he can throw, and he's got an arm.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, throwing a touchdown pass to A.J. Brown and then throwing a long 60, 70-yard pass to Devontae Smith. So that guy can catch. Mm-hmm. But Jalen, I think the Eagles, I don't think of it like I do with the Bengals, is even though the Eagles lost the Super Bowl, I could definitely see them going back if they make the right moves.
Right. And they don't have to tweak a whole ton of things. I mean, they're a pretty well-built team as it is right now. I would have to think Kansas City's got to tweak more than anything if they're going to go back.
Well, Kansas City might also lose Eric Bieniemy to Washington or Baltimore for the job. Well, actually, no, I can't say Baltimore because they've hired Todd Monken, so you can clear out Baltimore right there. So it's really Washington's to lose for Bieniemy.
Very true, and he deserves a shot. And of course, the one thing that also came to mind, and this came up during the game with Greg Olsen, which sucks to be you, Greg Olsen. You're taking a $7 million loss now with next season with Tom Brady being hired by Fox, but that sucks. You go down from 10 million to 3. But on top of it, the one thing I thought, how about that catch by Travis Kelce to open up the game? That was beautiful.
That was like, honestly.
Exactly.
And Britt and I were both betting for the Super Bowl on DraftKings. She ended up walking away with $49. You want to know how much I made with my little pathetic ass?
Nothing.
Close.
Maybe like $5.
No, I wish. I made $1.50.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I said my pathetic little ass.
Right. Well, it could be worse. I mean, our friend Luffy took a massive loss when he ended up betting the Eagles.
Well, I mean, last year I betted on the Bengals to win the Super Bowl, but I walked away with $450 on DraftKings.
Right. Didn't Adam throw like $1,500 on the Eagles or something weird?
I don't remember.
It was something up there, and it could have, like, if it paid out, it would have been like 15 grand or something crazy.
I have to ask him because I really don't know. I mean, I'm sure he would tell us, but like,
right? And I know he threw money on Kansas City too. So I mean, he did like both bets, but I know he ended up taking a loss on one of them. Obviously,
because I remember him saying that he was betting money on the Chiefs, but he was picking the Eagles to win. I don't know if that translates to him to betting. I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, it could be like one of those he plays like a two-way bet or something crazy. But I mean, I ended up doing a little bit through DraftKings myself. I mean, I ended up, at least I didn't lose anything, but I didn't really make anything off of it either. So I mean, that's that. But I mean, the stuff I played on Fox Bet though, nothing.
No.
So I got absolutely zero.
I mean, I use DraftKings when I bet, and my wife uses FanDuel. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy for Brittany because, for one, she loves football. She'll watch any game, really. It could be the XFL, the AFL, USFL, even the NFL, of course. But I'm proud of her, though, for how she did in the Super Bowl because she's never betted on an NFL game in her life. And all of a sudden, she puts this lineup together of all these talented players, and she drafted, I think, Patrick Mahomes on one team, and then had A.J. Brown on another, Jalen Hurts on another. She was all over the map. But she did really, really well. I think she had like 10 teams altogether, and she walked away with almost $50.
That's not bad.
That's really freaking good.
Yeah. So that's a big plus. But how about the Kelce brothers at the end of the game? Remember what Jason Kelce said to Travis Kelce?
Why don't you tell everybody? Tell us exactly what was said.
Let me bring it up. So it is hilarious, but he basically said, "Congratulations, fuck you."
Yeah, well, I you know what though? I can't be too mad about the exchange because for one, they're brothers, and two, they both won Super Bowls, and three, I don't think one's going to hold a grudge over the other because I know I saw a clip where Jason Kelce was acting like Stephon Diggs in the AFC Championship game a few years ago where he was standing right like in the background and he was just folding his arms like this or whatever. Mm-hmm. and he was watching the Super Bowl celebration because obviously Travis was on the podium and Jason was just there, and people were like, "Oh, he's probably gonna retire. Oh, redemption." I'm like, no, I think that's a bit over dramatic. I think if anything, he's just there to support his brother.
Right. And of course, they had the nice little camera shot of Jason Kelsey eating that little chocolate bar on the sideline. So we got to see that. The halftime show I didn't give a crap about. And then basically from there, I mean, it was actually, I gotta say, like, in terms of football itself, it was definitely one of the better games in the last several years.
I just felt like the ending of the game was completely ruined. But other than that, I think that was one of the better ones we've seen in a while.
Yeah. Because I remember, I want to say, what was it, like 5 or 7 years ago? It was just like a total defensive matchup to the point where literally it literally almost put me to sleep because of how many defensive plays were being done. It's like, come on, score something.
Well, I remember one game, I think it was Super Bowl 52, and all the country was picking the Eagles to beat the Patriots, and they did. So,
right.
At least I could say for Philly that that at least they have a ring. Because imagine they lost Super Bowl 52 and 57.
Oh,
and then,
God.
Yeah, the entire city of Philadelphia was cursed this year. Their soccer team went to the Cup game or whatever it was. Yep. They lost. The Phillies went to the World Series. They lost to Houston.
Yep.
And now look at the Eagles.
Yeah.
And
don't forget the Philadelphia 76ers had a chance in the playoffs and they lost.
And the Flyers, well, we don't talk about the Flyers.
They're a rebuild team right now.
Even John Tortorella said it's like, whatever, we're going in a rebuilding mode, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. Exactly. But all in all, it was a good game. It was one of the better ones we've seen in a while. Just unfortunately, that call at the end kind of screwed everything up, but it happens.
What can you do? What can you do?
Right. So with that, let's go into our next thing that we want to talk about. And there's a lot of NFL news lately, and there are several big stories that have come out. Well, first, Derek Carr, he's gone. He was released by the Raiders. So of course, good luck to any team that wants to try and pick him up. But we'll also get into some of the coaching changes that came up because, of course, Shane Swiesom has a new home, and of course, Arizona's got a new coach as well. But
we're gonna get to all the fun shit. Trust us, guys. We're gonna get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but let's go right into it. Derek Carr, he got his wish. He's no longer part of the Vegas. And the good thing is, he got to escape the dumpster fire.
You know, it's so interesting to me because do you remember the whole debacle when Josh McDaniels was the coach in Denver 15 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it was like Jake Plummer and Jay Cutler or something like that. Remember when those two were the quarterback?
Yep.
It's the same thing again. It's just very different. Because the only difference is when the Broncos traded Jay Cutler to the Bears, they actually got a return for him. In this case with Derek Carr, he outright said, I'm not accepting a trade because I don't want to do the Raiders any favors because they're the ones that screwed me over. Mm-hmm. And you know what? He had a right to it, and he stuck by it. And, you know, I'm proud of Derek Carr for that because why should he accept anything the Raiders do? Because he was such a loyal servant. But I guess now, after the debacle of bringing in Josh McDaniels, which I said was a disaster, that was a stupid idea as a whole. And now look at it. The biggest consequence of all this is Derek Carr. He's now the scapegoat in Las Vegas. So now him being cut, the Raiders now save about $29 million in cap. But if they didn't release him, then Derek Carr would have been owed $40 million guaranteed in his bonus.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. So Derek Carr straight up said that because of this, prior to the release, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week, there was a piece of evidence coming out from Ian Rappaport that said that Derek Carr met with the New Orleans Saints twice. And he's very infatuated with the culture and everything in New Orleans. And he was open to the idea about agreeing to a trade. And then on Super Bowl Sunday, he straight up said, no, I'm not accepting a trade to New Orleans because I am going to intentionally screw the Raiders over. So that's basically what it was. So now that he's a free agent, teams from all across the league are going to look at him. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, obviously the Saints were in there. I think the Panthers were mentioned. The Jets, they were brought up numerous times now.
Oh, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Oh, we're going to get to them in a bit. The Titans, I think, were brought up, and I think a new one that came up was the Buccaneers. They were another one that were brought up for Derek Carr. But the question is, what kind of money, or what's the asking price for Derek Carr? Because he's now a free agent, so now he can go out to any team, and he can go be their loyal servant there, like he was with the Raiders. Because when the Raiders were a dysfunctional shit show, post Khalil Mack, post Amari Cooper, Derek Carr would say, "You're not a real fan unless you praise everything we do." Because that's, again, Derek Carr being a loyal servant to the Raiders. Mm-hmm. So now he's going to probably bring that same attitude to whoever he plays for in the near future.
Right. But then, on top of it, now the Jets have a ton of problems because of the fact that good old Ryan Tannehill is now one of the rumored possibilities for the QB spot.
Oh, God. Okay, so...
And first off, Jets, why?
I don't even know where to begin with this. So for those who don't know, Connor J. Hughes, who's a reporter, a beat insider reporter for the Jets on SNY, I believe, came out with a statement, and I'm going to read this to you so y'all know what I'm talking about. And he says, and I quote, "There's a feeling around the league that the Jets are much higher on Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill than some want to believe." So, in other words, they're in favor of this bumbling douche over Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, and Lamar Jackson as a whole. But then, on top of all that, there was another report that came out and said that Lamar Jackson could be possibly going to the Jets if somehow the Jets don't get Aaron Rodgers.
It's absolutely crazy. And I mean, I actually ended up watching Pat McAfee's show on Monday, and Rodgers was on there, and he's completely undecided what he wants to do. So, I mean, that's one thing right there. So I wouldn't necessarily count him in. But Lamar Jackson, that's another story because he and the Ravens are $100 million apart in guaranteed money, which I'm like, okay, Lamar, you really haven't played an entire full season yet injury-free. Why would I give you an extra $100 million in guaranteed money? I don't get it.
I don't understand the logic behind the Jets. First off, why would you even entertain that idea of getting Ryan Tannehill? And I think at this point, if they're bringing up Ryan fucking Tannehill as an option, that tells you right there, the Jets, and I've said it the moment they hired Hackett, was they are not going to get Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm. Right. And look who he brings in as his offensive coordinator.
Oh, God. Yeah, Nate Hackett.
Coach. Yeah, well, no, I mean, look at like some of the other coaches that joined him, which is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, did you see who their new pass game coordinator is?
It's laughable.
It is so laughable, and it's so pathetic. So, let me put it to those for y'all who don't know. Nate Hackett, we all know, got hired as the new Jets offensive coordinator, but they bring in Todd Downing, the ex-Titans offensive coordinator, to be the new pass game coordinator for whoever the new Jets QB is going to be.
Yeah, and we all know how good of a coach he is. Never.
That is so embarrassing. You call yourself a quote-unquote legitimate playoff team coming up, and you consider yourselves to be a team on the rise, yet you have the audacity to bring in a guy whose head is big enough to look like a penis, and on top of all that, Todd Downing.
Right. It's like, Robert Saleh, why on earth are you letting him control the offense?
You know why I think they brought in Hackett, now that I'm thinking about it? Because they all look exactly alike. Hackett, Saleh, and Joe Douglas are all bald. The bald club.
Yeah, true. I mean, and Saleh may think, well, let's build such an incredible defense that we won't have to worry about the offense, except that's a problem.
Why is that, do you think?
Because, A, if you get Tannehill, you ain't going to do anything. Hackett's a total douche. I mean, Downing, he sucks. You're not improving your offense.
Well, I mean, they do have Garrett Wilson, but I feel like, and a lot of people have said this online, is that people think that if Lamar Jackson is a New York Jet and they're willing to throw everything, even the kitchen sink, for some of these guys.
Right.
Do you think it's worth paying him that much?
No. Absolutely and you know not. What? I mean, he's injury prone. That's one problem. And the way he plays, I mean, he's going to be lucky if he lasts like another 5 seasons.
I don't know, because I think if they trade him to the Jets and the Jets give up, let's say, 2 first-round picks, I definitely think that Ravens long-term win that trade alone because of the fact that, hey, Lamar Jackson may have one extra weapon in Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, but then again, Lamar Jackson is not a pass-type quarterback. He's a running quarterback.
Right.
He's not always going to pass the ball, and that's an issue. And plus, the Jets' offensive line is very decent, so you can't really rely on these guys to be fully healthy. Plus, you have Breece Hall. So, like, what you want a decent, like, quarterback to run the offense, not Lamar Jackson?
Well, exactly. I mean, you wouldn't want more of a one-dimensional QB. I mean, you want to have that dual threat, and even if you get like a pocket passing quarterback who can somewhat run, I mean, you're going to be in better shape. Lamar has proven when he's played big games, he doesn't have the arm. He has to rely on the run game. Look at what happened to the Ravens versus the Bills earlier. The Bills ended up shutting down Lamar this past season and basically made Lamar look completely irrelevant. You look at some of the other big games that have come up, especially when the Steelers ended up playing them in the past. Basically, the Steelers' defense ends up shutting down Lamar. So it's one of those, if you're shutting down the holes that he can run through, he ain't going to do anything.
Yeah, I think at this point, like when Lamar Jackson came in like 2019 or whatever the year was, not his rookie year, but his sophomore year when he won the league MVP, I think I was at that point, people were like, how do we stop this guy? And, you know, to be fair, he was great. But here's the issue. Over time, because of how he's played and his development, because that's the highest he's going to get at this point,
right?
Is people have figured him out. That's the thing about Lamar Jackson. People have quickly figured him out.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And now, I mean, teams can absolutely scheme against him, so that part's a great thing. So it actually, and Adam's in our group chat, but he basically ends up sending us a little thing here from Sportskeeda basically saying Trevon Diggs posted an edit of Stephon Diggs in a Dallas Cowboys jersey on his Instagram. Well, he ain't going anywhere.
No. I mean, Diggs already straight up said, you know, I don't regret my decision about what I did in that divisional game because I care about winning. I mean, show me a loser and then I'll do what I can or whatever it was he said exactly. But he's not wrong. I mean, the Bills showed little to no emotion after that game, but something happened in between that. But we've already discussed that so extensively.
Right, and there's really no need to rehash that entire thing again. I mean, you can go back like 4 episodes and you'll find it. So we've got that there. But, I mean, Lamar Jackson, good luck to him because, I mean, trying to find a team that's going to take him, that's a totally different story. But there have been some big head coaching moves, and we'll get to that in a moment. But how about fat-ass Rex Ryan being the surprise candidate for the Denver Broncos defense under Sean Payton? And yes, he got the lap band taken out, so he allowed his gut to grow again.
Please excuse me while I go set my arms flying out of my arms. You know, like, I don't even know where to begin. Like,
well, first he said that the Bills was going to be his last ever coaching job, so obviously something changed between now and then.
He's so full of shit, and you know it.
I know. I know. Just go back to HBO's Hard Knocks when he had that whole morning about let's go have a snack.
Oh, God. I couldn't stand him when he was the head coach here. I could not stand him. He was more annoying on the Jets than he was on the Bills. But it's not to say that Rex had his moments. Because Rex Ryan, of all people, had the biggest ego of any coach in the NFL.
Yeah, and of course he got that tattoo of Sanchez, if we remember right, and he had that foot fetish.
Yeah, he had the foot fetish thing. He had the tattoo of Mark Sanchez. I think it was a tattoo of his wife, I think, on his arm.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and you know, remember that monster? Remember that truck that he used to have with the Bills logo on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Ford 350 or whatever it was.
What a loser, dude! And he was and people thought he was such a home run hire. They put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated with Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly.
Yeah, and he was out of here in less than 4 years.
Yeah, and it was a 5-year deal at the time they signed him.
Yeah.
But looking
in fact, I remember I was at that game, Jacksonville versus Buffalo, when it went into that overtime, and it was Rex Ryan's last game because I remember freezing my ass off in the seats.
I thought it was Miami.
No, Jacksonville.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure of it because I remember it was. Or wait a minute, or am I thinking Doug Marone's last game?
I think it was Doug Marone's last game.
It might have been. I mean, either way, Bills lost it. So.
Yeah, it's funny because I just find it hysterical. Like, what does Sean Payton see in Rex fucking Ryan? He hasn't coached in 7 years.
Unless he thinks he's an exact clone of his brother, Rob Ryan, but...
Well, Rob Ryan and Rex Ryan are twins. But Rob
Right.
Ryan at least has a job as a consultant or as like a senior assistant, as like a coaching coordinator job with the Raiders. I mean, the funny thing about Rob Ryan is Rob Ryan will never be a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah, he's already proven that.
Yeah, I mean, he was an assistant coach, but that's not saying much.
Right.
And I could tell you, if you spoke to Brittany about Rex Ryan, bring up his name to Brittany, and she will react like Dracula to like the Holy Cross or like sunlight. You know how like vampires, they don't like the lights and they burn away or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's if you bring up the name Rex Ryan to Brittany's face, she will exaggerately like freak out because it's like, oh God, what a disaster he was.
Right. And I just don't get like the whole point of bringing him into Denver. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, yes, their new owners are completely loaded. I mean, they're the Walmart heirs, so of course they've got a ton of money to spend. Unless they're trying to do like Terry Pagula did when he first took over the Bills, get that big splashy hire and hope it all works out, which of course we know it can crash and burn very easily.
Two different sports, but I get the idea. And another name that was brought up by the Broncos to be the defensive coordinator job is Vance Joseph, who was just the head coach a couple of years ago.
Right.
What is Denver doing? I understand getting Sean Payton and you want to, rebuild Russell Wilson because you want to make up the lost year you made with that trade with Seattle to prove a point.
Yeah, which they won't be able to do.
But the thing is, you're stuck with him, and he might not get any better from there. I mean, if there was anything we learned about Nate Hackett, it's the guy can't coach. He can't coach. He can't run a team. It's very obvious.
Right.
And, no, it's a disaster. So what does Sean Payton honestly see in bringing in Rex Ryan, Sexy Rexy, to be the defensive coordinator in Denver? And supposedly he's the front runner for the job. Yeah, how about Vance Joseph? The guy was a head coach a couple years ago, or whenever it was. It was before Vic Fangio, and all of a sudden, boom, he becomes the coach, and he becomes mediocre. And now he's going back to Denver possibly as the defensive coordinator under Sean Payton.
Makes no sense. No, sense.
It doesn't. It's either Sean Payton doesn't know or he doesn't care. It's one or the other.
Right. And I'm thinking he doesn't care. He's just going to build whoever he wants to build. But still, it's like, look at it on the face. Rex Ryan, his time is done. He's proven that.
Yeah,
his time is done.
I've seen a lot of Broncos fans, because I know at least a couple of them. A lot of Broncos fans are not happy about the idea of bringing in Rex Ryan because they think that he's just going to be like the head coach he was with the Jets and the Bills. And the thing about that is Andy Van Meer, our co-host, brought up this comment the other day, and he said that unless they bring him back to turn the Broncos defense into like the early 2000s, Baltimore Ravens with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and all those guys when they beat the Giants, arguably the most dominant defense of all time. Rex Ryan was a part of that team. I think he was the defensive coordinator or something like that.
He was the defensive coordinator, and then he ended up being able to land the Jets job after that. But I mean, yeah, he can build a good defense, but then look what he did with Buffalo after he ended up getting fired from the Jets. Changes them from a Jim Schwartz-led 4-3 defense to a 3-4, and basically had no personnel, and he was trying to like cram a square peg in a round hole.
I always felt that Rex Ryan was trying to make his own image when he was in Buffalo. Like, I think he was, in my opinion, I think he was trying too hard. Like, I think he had good intentions, but I felt like at the time when he was the coach, I felt like that he was making it more about himself than he was about the team.
Mm-hmm. Right. Although I will give him credit on one thing. At least we ran the ball more than we do now, so I will give him that. But
yeah, but we'll see what happens next year. But it also depends. It's not even a guarantee if the Bills bring back Devin Singletary. We don't even know that yet.
Very true. And they're going to have to work through some cap issues. But, I mean, we'll have the draft coming up, obviously. But they got to figure that whole thing out. But then, I mean, two other big hires, and then we'll go into the second half of the show. But Arizona, of course, as we all know, they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, and they end up bringing in they end up bringing in Philadelphia's defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, and then the Colts decide the Jeff Saturday experiment's done. They hire Philadelphia's offensive coordinator Shane Steichen.
I read an interesting stat about both of these guys, and supposedly the Philadelphia Eagles are the first team in the Super Bowl era since the 1994 San Francisco 49ers to lose both of their coordinators after or winning the Super Bowl.
That doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't. Usually it's one or the other.
Okay, so I have mixed opinions about both of these guys. For one, I think both men, deserve jobs, but I think they were both too young for the job, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because some guys could be on a really good system. Just in comparison, like Brian Dable, when he got the Giants job, he was already in Buffalo's system for 3 years as the offensive coordinator, or 4 years, whatever the number was. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you bring him in to be the Giants head coach, and they're a playoff team, and they go to the second round.
And congrats to Dayball on getting coach of the year.
Yeah, but I don't even know enough about Steichen or Gannon to give it a full opinion. I don't really know enough about them to really say, wow, this is a great hire. Like what? Just because, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, you automatically think you're going to get what you got in Philadelphia to Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. I feel like that this was more of like a stretch, in my opinion, for both of these guys. Right. I think if anything, for Arizona, I think they should have hired Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. I think that would have been a lot more sense because that's a defensive team, and I think he would have really staggered well with the Cardinals. But I don't know. It just feels like to me the Cardinals and the Colts have this vendetta against the Eagles, so they figure let's just go out and do the same thing again. Because think about it. Frank Reich was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles when he was hired as the head coach of the Colts. And look what happened. What position is Shane Steichen?
Yep.
There you go. He was the coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. So this is now the second coach that the Colts brought in from the Eagles. And it might not even pan out. We really don't know yet.
Right.
So... But Arizona's, though, I'm not too keen on Arizona. I think Arumo should have gotten the job, or even then, by that standpoint, I don't really know. I think there were better options available, but I think Gannon should have not got the job. I think he could have got at least one more year out of him before making a decision. But the Eagles now have work to work. They have something to work with, and now they have to go and replace both of these guys. And they better do it right, because if they don't do it right, then they're not going back to the Super Bowl next year.
Right. Very true. And yet somehow Josh McDaniels still has a job. Oh my god.
Fuck. I can't stand
I know, right?
Of all the coaches in the modern era, I hate Josh McDaniels.
Yeah. And you ever notice any of the coaches that come out of Bill Belichick's system absolutely crash and burn anywhere they end up? But yet, the funny thing is that the coaching now out of Andy Reid's tree, all except for, I think, like one coach has performed extremely well.
Yeah, it's funny because all of them come from the Andy Reid tree. But, again, Andy Reid is a phenomenal coach. So whoever gets his assistants or his coordinators, usually they tend to do really well. Like McDermott came from the Andy Reid tree. He's a perfect example of what we currently have.
Exactly. The New York Giants. Look what they did with Dayball. Basically, indirectly through the Andy Reid tree, part of Sean McDermott. Done really well. And then a lot of Andy Reid's assistants have all done really well as well. So I will say this, as much as, in a way, I don't like the Chiefs, I do respect the team. I like Andy Reid as a coach. He's a great coach. I can respect that.
Fair enough.
Bill Belichick, here you go.
Yeah, basically. There's a difference between Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. Andy Reid actually had weapons, and he actually had talent around him within 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he took a crap Philadelphia Eagles team and actually made them very relevant.
Yeah, didn't he take them to the Super Bowl with Donovan?
Yeah, they lost, but he still got
Donovan. Yeah, with Donovan McNabb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he had virtually no weapons, so he still got him there. Reid's a good coach. Belichick, the only reason Belichick had any success is because Brady gave him success.
Yeah, I think Bill Belichick is going to either retire soon or he's going to get fired. One of those two is going to happen at some point in the near future. But Robert Kraft is in his 80s. Let him live his days with Bill Belichick, and then they'll decide what they're going to do from there. But all in all, though, I'm not too keen on either one to be head coaches between Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. I'm not ready to say fully if they're good or not because, yeah, they went to a Super Bowl and they have that criteria with the Eagles. But, again, just because you were a coordinator – for a Super Bowl finalist doesn't automatically make you exactly what you are able to get.
Exactly. And one last note before we go into the second half of the show. How about Robert Kraft wanting to throw the kitchen sink at Tom Brady to retire as a New England Patriot, and he's already said no?
Tough shit.
Exactly. It's like,
Tough
Belichick,
shit.
maybe you shouldn't have thrown him to the curb when you did. You would have had at least one more Super Bowl, probably.
Or maybe don't treat him like shit or force him out of town, and maybe you wouldn't have this issue.
Yeah, exactly. So, with that being said, what we're going to do, we're going to go into the second half, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It's your Wednesday night uncensored, unfiltered, and unafraid sports show. You still up? This episode of Buffalo After Dark starts now. Welcome back to Buffalo After Dark. It is the second half of our show tonight. Of course, we're going to go right in hockey. If you want to jump in and join us, 929-205-6099 will get you on the air. And let's see where we want to start. Well, there was some big NHL news, of course, over the past week. But the biggest story that came out, Vladimir Tarasenko got traded. And he's not part of the St. Louis Blues anymore. Instead, he's now with the New York Rangers. And St. Louis, you got screwed.
Woo!
And not even a little bit, a lot.
God, I have a lot to say about this trade. So let's go over the details, shall we?
It's hilarious.
Okay, so looking back from Thursday, because this trade happened last Thursday, we're gonna read to you guys who got what in this deal. So last week, dating from that point on, the New York Rangers acquired Vladimir Tarasenko and defenseman Nico Nicola from the St. Louis Blues in a trade to the New York Rangers in exchange for, ready, forward Sammy Blais, prospect Hunter Skinner, who's a defenseman, a fourth-round pick from 2019, a late conditional first-round pick in 2023, and a conditional fourth-round pick in 2024. And the fourth-round pick becomes a third if the Rangers make the playoffs.
Oh my God, St. Louis. You didn't even get a guaranteed first.
Oh, and did I mention that the Blues are also retaining 50% of Tarasenko's salary?
That's even better.
Yeah. Yeah, so Nico Mikola and Vladimir Tarasenko are going to the New York Rangers. I hate life.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And you know what's even a bigger slap in the face? Vladimir Tarasenko scored his first goal last Friday in his debut against the Seattle Kraken. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and we'll talk about them for a moment too, because we have some Patrick Kane news that'll probably come up in a little bit. But how about the fact that now he's playing with Artemi Panarin?
I think that's been the idea for a while.
Yeah.
But you know what? I actually made this comparison a little while now for less than a week, and I still stand by it. So basically, The Rangers basically traded a Prius for a Lamborghini.
Yeah, really.
Or in this case, they traded a Prius for a Maserati.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Or how about trying to think of another comparison I could give you.
It's like trading bubblegum for raisins.
Yeah, or they traded a Fiat and ended up getting a Mercedes Benz.
Oh, Christ. What the fuck is St. Louis thinking here?
I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, we do know one thing. They're going into rebuilding mode because it's pretty evident that Tarasenko has been wanting out of St. Louis for at least a few years. And you know what? To his credit, though, Tom,
yeah, he stuck through it.
He stuck through it, and he professionally did his job. He didn't complain once. And you know what? Kudos to him.
Good for him.
You know what? Kudos to Vlad. Because you know what? He's one of those players that I think are serviceable for a playoff team, and the Rangers rightfully deserve to have him. However, they're not going to be able to re-sign him because he's right now making about $7.5 million for the next few months until he's a free agent in July.
Right.
And the Rangers have too many problems right now coming up in the cap because they're going to have to re-sign Keandre Miller. They're going to have to sign Philip Chatel. They're going to have to sign Igor. They're going to have a bunch of guys on that roster that Chris Drury is going to want to sign to an extension. So in order for that to happen, they're going to have to let some people go. And Tarasenko is just a rental player. So whoever gets him in free agency, that team is going to pay him a load of money. But it's probably going to be his last big contract before he retires in a couple of years.
Just out of random curiosity, could you ever picture if the Sabres actually got him in free agency since we have that much money in the salary cap?
You know what? That would not shock me if the Sabres did get Tarasenko.
That would be a sweet move if they actually did.
But you also keep in mind, he's also 31 years old.
Right.
So you want to be very mindful about when you do that. Same with Patrick Kane. You know, I know people are talking about Patrick Kane a lot lately, but we're going to get to him in a bit. But the whole deal, though, I definitely think at this point the Rangers want to trade. And even then, guess what? That first-round pick the Rangers gave up, they don't give a fuck because they have 2 first-round picks. They have their own, and they also got the one from Dallas in the Nils Lundkvist trade about a year ago.
Right. You give St. Louis the crappier of the first-round picks, there you go.
So, yeah, it was just... It's such an awful trade in return for the Blues because we all knew Sammy Blais wasn't doing much. He was hurt, and then he went to the AHL, didn't do shit, and now you all of a sudden now throw in this middle road, defensive prospect who's probably not going to develop.
Skinner, who's not even proven.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I heard that Tarasenko was being brought up in a trade, and when I heard the word prospect in there, I was thinking it was either going to be Kaapo Kakko or Alex Lafreniere. Because there's been some speculation in the Big Apple that the Rangers might trade one of the two in a blockbuster trade, and I figured that's what they were going to throw in. And then I saw Hunter Skinner, and I'm like, wow, they really lowballed them.
Yeah, the St. Louis Blues got owned.
Like, seriously, how can you tell that to my face that the Blues win this trade? Try telling that story to me.
They absolutely don't win the trade whatsoever.
You can't tell me that with a straight face that the Blues won that trade. No. There's just no chance in hell.
I would love for someone to attempt to try and even say that because there is, no way it's possible.
Yeah, you could blame this fucking idiot because I, for one, did that same reaction when the Blues got Ryan O'Reilly. But at the time, we didn't know any of the assets that were going to get sent to Buffalo. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, the one player that stood out in that whole deal was Tage Thompson. But thankfully, he's a superstar, and Buffalo has him long term.
Yeah, and we got him for cheap, which is even better. Mm-hmm. So good job, Adams, on that signing. Absolutely.
Well, actually, I think it was Jason Botterill who made that trade.
Well, as part of it, yeah, and then Adams with the extension, but
yeah, sure,
great deal.
Mm-hmm. But no, bottom line is if you're gonna trade a veteran forward, please get something decent for them. Don't do what the Blues just did. It's a friendly reminder of don't play stupid games.
Yeah, stupid games win stupid prizes.
Exactly, and the St. Louis Blues are not going home with anybody tonight.
Yeah, they got first place in the absolute crap category.
Well, I would say them or the Canucks. One of the two.
Oh, God. Yeah, the Canucks are a total dumpster fire. It would literally take us 2 hours just to even go over all that stuff, but
Yeah, but we're not going to get into that. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is Vancouver's a disaster. St. Louis is about to enter that phase again.
Yep. And then Seattle is trying to make a play for good old Patrick Kane.
I've also heard the same for Jonathan Taves, which just came out saying that Jonathan Taves is highly unlikely to be traded.
Right.
And I'm just thinking to myself, oh, so you're going to trade Patrick Kane, but you won't trade Jonathan Taves.
Right. And the thing is that Patrick Kane, I mean, of course, he's been wanting out for a while. I mean, he's sick of what's going on with the Blackhawks. And I mean, of course, Jonathan Taves is going to be feeling the same way. A lot of their players are feeling the same way because basically they haven't built anything in the last 5 years. So, of course, the speculation is Patrick Kane may waive the no trade clause. Supposedly, he's talking with former teammate Duncan Keith. So,
For what?
who knows about possible landing spots or something? But
There was only one landing spot Duncan Keith went to, and that was friggin' Edmonton. I think if anything, he's probably saying, what can I possibly do to get there? Because first off, Edmonton can't afford him. Second,
Right.
they're trying to get Eric Carlson. And third, they can't make trades without having to go under or over the cap. So that's going to be an
Exactly.
issue for Edmonton.
Right.
But I will say this. I don't know, did you see the comments that Patrick Kane made the other day?
I didn't have a chance to see that yet, but I know that there were some different comments that were pretty interesting.
Yeah, one of the comments that Patrick Kane made was he actually made a comment about the Vladimir Tarasenko trade, and he said of all the teams I was willing to waive my no trade clause to, it was to the Rangers, and I was pretty pissed off when I found that it was him over me, and I'm just like thinking, well, Pat, you're a professional hockey player. If you wanted out of Chicago for so long, you should have requested a trade when you knew the time was right.
Right.
You blew it, buddy.
And don't enforce a no trade clause in that case.
Yeah, and guess what? Vladimir Tarasenko did the right thing, which was he requested a trade a few years ago, and now looking at back at it now, Vladimir Tarasenko probably had the best chance of getting traded than Patrick Kane right now, because Patty Kane right now, he's just throwing a bitch fit because he said, I would rather play for the Rangers, I wanted to go here, I wanted to go there, I would have waived my no trade clause. Then he had the no desire to play for the Islanders.
And it would have been a good fit for him.
Exactly, but the problem is this. He's making $10.5 million, and he's at like a steady decline. And the only two teams he's possibly willing to go, get dealt to are the New York Rangers or the Toronto Maple Leafs. So unless you like throw in like Vitaly Kravtsov in a deal to Chicago and involving Patrick Kane, Patty Kane is not going to the Rangers.
Right, and he sure as hell is not going to the Leafs because of all their cap issues. So,
but what about Vegas? Vegas has some options.
True, and I mean, but then they also have some cap stuff they have to worry about also.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's one of the things where, I mean, who knows where he's going to end up. It's just one of those deals where there's just, I mean, and for the people that want him on the Buffalo Sabres, I doubt he will come back here and play.
Who, Reinhardt?
No, Patrick Kane.
Oh, Patrick. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. He's a legend, and he's going to be an NHL legend.
Yeah, and he'll be in the Hall of Fame eventually.
Yeah, he's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. But here's the issue. He's too old. He's 34 years old.
Right. Yeah.
He's washed up.
He's past his prime.
Yeah, and same with Jonathan Taves. But Taves, I think, even though I just said it's highly unlikely he gets traded, I would have said Winnipeg or Colorado or even Seattle would have been good options for Taves. But it's likely not happening that he gets traded. But Patrick Kane is definitely wanting out. And it's very obvious to the naked eye that everybody knows that Patrick Kane wants to be traded. And to be quite frank, he's being very bratty about it. Because think about what he's saying. He's saying, I don't want to play for the... He's like, I have no desire to play for the Islanders. I want to play for the Rangers, or I want to play for the Maple Leafs. First off, you're probably better on the Rangers than you would be on the Leafs. Because if you go to the Leafs, you're basically one and done. And Toronto will get desperate. If they especially want him, they'll get desperate, and they'll trade their first-round pick to Chicago, and then they'll go from there. I don't know what the asking price is but Patty Kane does have a no trade clause, so he can waive it and he can go to any team in the league. Like, what about Boston? What about Carolina? What about New Jersey? You know, I mean, look, I have a freaking Devils jersey on. Why don't you go there, buddy?
Mm-hmm. Right. And then, of course, when we ended up talking a little bit earlier, I mean, Edmonton, there's no way they'd be able to sign him because, of course, A, you got McJesus. B, you've got Leon Draisaitl, and there's two of your highest paid contracts right there.
Yeah, and C, they're also trying to work on a trade that will get Erik Karlsson to go to Oiltown.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then, of course, you got Evander Kane over there, who ended up coming back after that nasty injury earlier in the season. I mean, he's getting some decent money, so...
That's that.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me with everything that's been going on. Because, for one, we don't really know who's getting traded. We know Patty Kane's going to probably get traded, but I think he's a little bit... I think he's under the illusion that the Rangers will welcome him with open arms, and they'll say, yeah, Pat, come on down. Come down to the Big Apple, play with us. Yeah, but like with what line? Where are you going to put him? There's no place for him on the team unless you trade like Kapokako or Vitaly Kravtsov, who requested a trade, but you can't really go anywhere else outside of that. Plus, you have to take into consideration Patrick Kane's cap hit is $10.5 million.
That's huge. That is a huge.
And the money he's making now was when he was in his prime with the Blackhawks.
Right. And again, big problem. Even if he were to, even another team I would look at, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they have their own cap issues they have to worry about with Crosby. Of course, you got Malkin with his issues going on, and they're not exactly that great right now either. I mean, they're sort of in a little bit of a rebuilding mode, although they're not, and they're just trying to tweak what they have. But Crosby's on the downside of his career, Malkin's on the downside of his career, and yet they're getting paid insane money, just like Patrick Kane is.
What about the Dallas Stars? What about the LA Kings?
Right.
Hell, how about something like the Calgary Flames? I know they're not the best team in the world, but
can you picture him and Daryl Sutter?
Oh God,
that would be a total clash.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And it's funny because there's speculation about Daryl Sutter's future in Calgary. There's a possibility he might get fired, but I don't know.
They've underperformed.
I don't think that's fair because the Flames were really freaking good last year or the year before, whatever it was. Calgary, I think, did a phenomenal job in the trade. I mean, I know it has nothing to do with Daryl Sutter, but
but they made a good trade off that deal.
They did, and people thought that Calgary was gonna, steamroll everybody and go to the Cup final. Now there's speculation that because of the cap, there's a possibility that Mackenzie Weegar might get traded.
Right. Which, I mean, it would hurt them, but at the same time, you make a decent deal or get decent picks in return. I mean, you can kind of offset that in a way.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and that's the funny thing about all this is that you want to have a balance when you're a playoff team, and trading him, as in Patrick Kane, I think trading him would be ideal for Chicago, but I feel like that. Whoever the GM is, it's definitely not Stan Bowman, but I feel like whoever the GM is in Chicago, I feel like they're not going to get the best return.
Right. How about the Florida Panthers?
No, definitely not the Florida Panthers.
Right. They won't want to do that, and they definitely would never send him to Nashville, a division rival.
Well, they might send him to Dallas. That's a possibility.
Right.
And again, the New Jersey Devils, I think, would be a great option for Patty Kane, especially if they can't get Timo Meier. Which let's be real here for a minute. I think at this point the Devils are going to get Timo Meier. I firmly think that. I think that's a possibility because San Jose, once you trade Timo Meier, he's off your hands, he's off your books, and he's an RFA. And the Devils could sign him to a long-term deal, and he'll be terrorizing the Metropolitan for years to come. Because he's still in his prime. He's not a UFA. So whoever signs him, it's not whoever trades for him at least, that team will have the ability to sign him to a long-term deal.
Right. And let's get into the trade deadline because now that you bring up Timo Meier, I mean, there's still some speculation on where he could end up. I mean, would he be a great fit for the Sabres? Absolutely he would. I know Andy was talking about this earlier this week when we had our group chat going, and basically he wants Jacob Chikrin here, which, again, another good fit. And he had some pretty good suggestions on what you get in return.
It's funny you mentioned that because there was a lot of talk from Nick Kiprios, which he's a quote unquote insider, but after all that, he's full of shit. He just lost all his credibility.
Right.
Because he basically said that Jacob Chikrin was going to go to the LA Kings and that Brant Clark was going to go the other way in a deal. And it was so bad in terms of that situation that the Kings straight up told Brant Clark, "You're not getting traded. You're part of the future."
Mm-hmm.
But I could see Alex Turcotte being in a deal because as of what it looks like, it really just comes down to asking price, assets, etc. It looks like the LA Kings are going to be the team to get Jacob Chikrin. We could very well be completely off by the March 3rd deadline. He might not even get traded, but Jacob Chikrin is already being scratched for, quote, trade reasons. Same with Vladimir Tarasenko from Columbus. He's another player that's being scratched for trade reasons. So, honestly, I don't know where to begin because
there's so many different players that there's rumors on right now. I mean, obviously, we talked about Kane, but here's another one. I mean, we just touched on Jacob Chikrin a little bit. How about the Red Wings? Dylan Larkin. He's another trade target.
Well, it depends on what happens with his contract situation because, for one, he's a hometown kid. He was drafted by the Red Wings. He played at college hockey in Detroit. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and he's their captain. So I don't think the Red Wings want to lose him for anything necessarily. But I feel like the whole the Yzer plan in Detroit is not working up to the hype as it was in Tampa Bay because he's been the GM now for a few years, and I don't think it's worked out into his favor. I could be wrong in a couple of years and be like, "Wow, Steve Yzerman actually has a plan," but I don't know. But back on track, and that is, I think with the whole Larkin situation, it just feels like to me that it really comes down to the money because the Red Wings want to sign him and Dylan Larkin wants around $8 to $9 million, which I think he rightfully deserves it. But I feel like the Red Wings at the same time are lowballing him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when we look at some other deals that are possibly going to happen, I mean, Max Domi, he's another trade target. That's come up quite a bit. But here's one actually. I know we had a chance to talk about a little bit before the show, and this was the Columbus Blue Jackets. They want a first round, a third round, and a fourth round pick for Vladislav Gavrikov.
That is so much.
It is.
And you know what? I actually made this metaphor to somebody I work with at my job. My coworker, who's only like 19, 20 years old, big hockey guy. But I explained to him earlier that the trade deadline, I like to call it as like going to a Blockbuster. You desperately try to find that next videotape or that next DVD or whatever it is you could find that's on the shelf. You desperately get it lined to try to rent that movie, and then you go home and watch it, and then you're in desperation mode again, especially if you're late on your fee of paying off the movie.
Yep.
And it's just like you keep going back and forth, and that tape is a free agent. It can go home to anybody's hands. You can either buy the DVD or the tape, and you never see it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a crazy deal, and it's a crazy return for what the Blue Jackets really should get.
Seriously, I mean, that is a lot for a guy who doesn't really play a lot. A first-round pick, a fourth, and what else did you say?
A third.
And a third. That is a lot of assets to ask for Kravikov. I mean, I could see teams like Vegas being involved. I could see Edmonton being involved, Toronto being involved. I really don't know who's going to get him, but somebody will pay a first-round pick for him. Because, again, using the Blockbuster term, teams will get desperate and they will trade away their future just for 1 month or maybe a few months of this guy, or unless they sign him to an extension.
Right. And then of course, a couple other things that came out of it. I mean, Connor Timmins did get a 2-year extension with the Leafs, so he's off the table. But the Winnipeg Jets are rumored to be interested in James Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah, I've also heard the Minnesota Wild, and I've also heard the New Jersey Devils were mentioned in the James Van Riemsdyk trade rumor mill. But there's so many names available that you never know who can be traded. Who else is on the board?
Ivan Barbashev's on the board.
Ivan Barbashev, he's another player that's available.
He's up there. Sam Lafferty, he's up there from Chicago.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly's another one.
Yeah. Jack Roslovic from Columbus, he's another one that's on the table. So,
yeah, there's a lot of guys available. You ever notice there's no goaltenders available?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because I think the last time a goalie was traded at the deadline or around that frame was freaking Ryan Miller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he went to the St. Louis Blues.
Or Roberto Luongo, even, now that I think about it, because he went back to the Panthers.
Right. After he played in Vancouver all those years.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know. I think this is going to be one of those deadlines where it can make or break a team. But I think if there's one team that desperately needs to get over the hump, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah. They need to make the right move because the Matt Murray trade has not panned out in their favor. And this is a make it or break it year for the Leafs. They have to get past the first round. Because if they don't, you could just rip that core up goodbye.
Exactly. I mean, they have all that star power. And it shows absolutely nothing.
Oh, and guess what? If the playoffs started today, guess who would they be playing in the first round?
Yeah.
Tampa.
Yeah. And Tampa would smoke them probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then, of course, there's some other things that are coming out in the light, too. I mean, of course, Josh Anderson, that's another player that's on the board with the Calgary Flames. Boone Jenner's another one. Joel Edmondson, actually, the Boston Bruins are interested in him, and he's a defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens. So that's another thing. And of course, what does Montreal do when they want to take the attention off the whole issues with the team? Put in a new scoreboard at the beginning of the season.
Like if that's
which is what they ended up doing. Oh, and the Penguins, they're doing the same thing this offseason, putting a new scoreboard in, so it'll take the attention off the team.
Oh, yeah. Another one is Gustav Nyquist, but he's injured. He's done for the year. I don't think there's anybody. Shane Gostisbehere is another one that's on here.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, Nikita Zaitsev was an interesting one that got brought up because there's speculation that Zaitsev is getting traded, but if anywhere, it's going to either be Anaheim or San Jose.
Right. Makes sense. And then the Bruins want a left side defenseman very badly to the point where they're willing to possibly overpay.
How are they going to do it? Because with the cap they have.
That's a good question. I mean, right now they're in cap hell, so they really don't have any flexibility to do anything.
Well, who knows? Another one I've heard is Brock Besser. Besser's another one. I've heard a lot of dialogue between the Canucks and the Calgary Flames for Brock Besser. Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. Erik Karlsson's one that's been coming up.
Yeah. Again, I think Karlsson ends up going to Edmonton. I mean, it's only a matter of what they give up for him and what they trade. Yeah. I mean, I have read that Evan Bouchard's name has been brought up. Another first was brought up going to San Jose as part of the deal. I mean, I think if anything, I think that's going to be the trade that will make it or break the Sharks' future. Because I know Mike Greer is trying desperately to get rid of that Karlsson contract for what he's been able to do. But there's always going to be some dumb buyer, and clearly Edmonton is looking like the front runner.
Yeah, and Sean Monahan's name is coming up also with Colorado Avalanche wanting to possibly go after him.
Yeah. By the way, did you see the asking price for Jake McCabe?
It's insane.
Yeah, a first-round pick.
That ain't happening.
No, that is not happening. I'm sorry.
Definitely not happening. Second at best.
And the Sabres had to put up with this shit for a few years? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not worth it to me.
No, it's not.
No, John Kleinberg is a possibility, but there's been talk that he might stay in Anaheim. Let's see. I already mentioned Rod O'Reilly. Vitaly Kravtsov, I mentioned earlier, requested a trade out of New York. Yep. So he's probably on his way out. Tyler Bertuzzi, that's another one that's available for the Red Wings possibly. Because if Larkin can't go, Bertuzzi is going to go. And I think if they can't get both of them locked up, the Red Wings are screwed.
Oh, yeah. And they're already having issues as it is.
They are screwed if the Red Wings let both of those guys go.
Right.
And one other name I've heard, too, is Luke Shen. I've heard that name come up pretty often.
Yeah, that's another interesting pick there, too. And then one name we know won't be going anywhere is Andrei Kuzmenko because he ended up signing a 2-year extension with the Canucks, which I'm like, Andre, why would you stay with Vancouver with all the crap that they're dealing with?
I would like to have what he's having.
Yeah, did he smoke like shrooms or like really nasty weed or something?
Yeah, I already heard there was a conversation with Chris, with Max Domi, and he took a load of crystal meth, and he says, in quote, I want to stay in Chicago.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why do you want to stay there?
Yeah, seriously.
What's the point? It's like the Hawks have no direction whatsoever.
Yeah,
why
they don't. Hell, even Rutherford wants out, and we talked about that last week.
Yes, we did. And Jim Rutherford is like, "No, that's not gonna happen. I'm sorry."
Right.
Uh, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
This whole thing is just like
Yeah.
it's blasphemous.
Yeah. Matthias Ekholm's another one on the block. But we do know Matthew Boldy's going to stay in Minnesota. He signed a 7-year extension, so.
Mm-hmm.
Which they needed to keep him, so.
Yeah. Did we mention the Jacob Magna trade last week?
I think we started getting into it a little bit.
I think you mentioned it. I don't remember it. But it doesn't matter because San Jose was just starting to get assets and shit like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to me how all this is playing out.
Right. And then here's another good one, and we can debate like whether he's worth it. The Seattle Kraken want Sam Reinhart, and that's another one. But the San Jose Sharks, we might have touched on this. They want 3 first-round picks for Erik Karlsson.
You know what? Carlson is going to probably cost them 2 first-round picks. I mean, it's very possible, but we'll see. 3 first-round picks, I think, is a bit too much because imagine if the Sharks went to the finals in 2019 or 2020, Ottawa would have gotten another first-round pick in that trade. So
that, and then Jack Campbell possibly to the Blackhawks, which there's so many different things here, but it'll be interesting to see how things plan out because, I mean, we're still a ways away from the NHL draft, obviously, but...
Draft's not until, like, June, though, Tom.
Exactly. I mean, we're still a ways away from it. But it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Well, let me ask you a question. If the Sabres, let's say, for the sake of argument, don't make the playoffs this year, and this is a pretty deep draft, do you think this would be the worst or the best case scenario for Buffalo?
Probably could be a best case scenario because, I mean, deep draft, I mean, with the talent that's out there this year, you easily could get someone in the first, second, or third round that could potentially develop. So, I mean, I don't think it's a sink or swim type of situation right now. I really don't.
I don't know. I mean, imagine, that pick goes in the top 3 and Buffalo wins the lottery.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that means they would either get Connor Bedard or Adam Vinatieri in that, draft.
And either would be a great addition.
I mean, hell yeah. I mean, why the hell not? I mean, I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I mean, Connor Bedard's has been totally ripping it up. So, but not a bad situation either way.
Oh, and we forgot to mention one more person that could possibly be traded this year. Kevin Shattenkirk.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I actually forgot about Kevin. I
wasn't even thinking about that.
Me neither. I honestly forgot about him.
Yeah. But, I mean, depending on however any of these trade rumors go, the nice thing is, if we look at it from the Sabres standpoint, they have cap money. We have a lot of room we can work with. We're not in cap hell. That's one thing I will give Adams a lot of credit. He has managed the cap very well, and he's been pretty smart with it. And, I mean, and I will say some of it, sure, Botterill did some decent things. I mean, he definitely was a little bit better than Murray in some respects. But the fact is, Murray depleted the big club. Murray depleted everything for the Amherst. Then Botterill depleted the Sabres and focused on the Amherst. At least Adams is balancing it out.
Without a doubt. So
it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, on the flip side, one last thing before we get running here is we'll probably talk about this in the next few weeks, but the Buffalo Bills are close to getting their stadium deal done finally as of today. So there's going to be no additional extensions. They're on track to get everything signed, and basically from there, looks like groundbreaking will be sometime this spring.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'm not worried about it, honestly, too much.
Yeah, me either. But we do know ticket prices will go up at least 12%, so that's one thing that's also come out.
At most, even.
Yeah, but we're still going to be in the lower tier pricing of the league, so it's not all that bad. But it'll be interesting to see some shovels hit the ground finally. So with that, I mean, we covered quite a bit in just a little over an hour. So I mean, I don't really have too much to say, but of course, as usual, thanks for joining us as you normally do. And of course, we'll be on YouTube within the next few days with this episode. Check out our other stuff. Of course, join us usually on Wednesday nights. And from there, it's going to be kind of quiet now with the NFL because we're done with football. Now we have the XFL and the USFL coming back.
Yeah, XFL starts on Saturday, and the USFL starts in April.
Yeah. So.
But I will say for one PSA, really quick, is starting Saturday, I'm going to be sitting the entire weekend in New Jersey. I am, in fact, going to the Devils game on February 19th on Sunday against the Winnipeg Jets with my buddy Rod Hazard.
There you go, Bert. We haven't heard from him in a while. Yeah, have him get his ugly ass on that 4K scoreboard over in Newark.
Yeah, you know what? It's been like 3 years since I went to New Jersey, but I'm excited personally because I wanted to go see the Island game against Pittsburgh, but that's tomorrow. So I didn't have enough funds to do it. So we've been planning this for a couple of weeks. So we figured, let's go to New Jersey. Let's go to the Devils game and see what we have going on.
Yeah. And I know just on my end, work schedule kind of came up. I mean, I was thinking of coming down sometime next month, and it's just unfortunately right now with stuff I'm taking on, I just don't have a way to get out of it at this point. So, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Yeah. But then again, this coming season, we'll probably have another football trip to talk about. So we'll be doing that.
Yeah, we got some plans coming up. We're definitely going to do it for sure. But,
right.
At the end of the day, we're excited. It's either going to be Cincinnati or it's going to be Philadelphia. We haven't really decided yet, but we have to wait for the schedule. It could be a double dip for all we know.
It could be. I mean, either way. But it'll be some fun to talk about when that comes around. And, of course, we'll make sure that you guys are filled in on it. And we'll kind of do like we did with Kansas City this past October, which I will say that was definitely a fun trip when we did that. Definitely enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
So good timing. But with that being said, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us as you usually do. And, of course, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time.
See you later.